And of course, it's my favorite words in sports. Game 7. We got Florida and Edmonton. About almost at the halfway point of the third period. So will we see history tonight? The answer is yes, because you're here with Sports Reports' order. But we gonna do it like
Factual.
this. Yes, you are now listening to the sounds of Sports Reports' order. And we are 2 days away from the NBA draft. So, of course, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to talk about the NBA offseason, a.k.a. the NBA has no offseason. So we're going to get into that. I know I keep saying we, and you're wondering, what do I mean by we? Well, I'm talking about the one and only, the even kill. Born in Texas, raised in VA, representing New Jersey. Do not, I repeat, do not bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't do it.
He is Mr. Logic. And then over here, you got your unorthodox statistician going left so much that you thought I was southpaw. Put them on their ass like their name was Wilder. 2-5 in your ears. Let's get this started. All right. So as I said, the NBA has no off season because we're talking about the NBA all year round. I remember we used to be like, yo, let's get geared up for football season. And it was like, no, NBA free agency just started. And now for the next 3 weeks, we're analyzing every move. We're analyzing the drama. And then the NBA always has a surprise in their force. So I know free agency doesn't start until Sunday on June 30th. But we've had some action. We got some things that we might want to see. So Mr. Logical and I are going to break that down for you. So I'm going to pass the mic to Mr. Logical and ask Mr. Logical what you want to see.
I want to see something big. I want to see a big move. I want to see one of these teams that might be a player away just go for it. I want to see Philly make a move instead of just kind of just being mediocre. A lot of teams seem to be kind of advocating to themselves, like, you know what? Let's just stay relevant. Let our young star push us over the edge. Some teams have that luxury. Boston had it 7 years ago when they had their young stars, and then they brought in Kyrie, and it was like it didn't work, but they kept their young stars, and they kept letting their young stars develop, and it worked out. Some of these guys are old. Like you think about Philly Embiid, I believe is like 30, but his body's like 36. Like it's like an NBA 36 with the injuries and, leg pain, knee pain, always falling, things of that nature. So I want to see them either. I read an article that they were off the Paul George hunt, but that could just be smoke and mirrors. Daryl Morey, like James Harden said last year, he's a liar. You don't want to work with him. I saw another trade proposal today. And I don't know how much Paul George has left in the tank, but I saw something today and it was like, I don't know if it's a bad idea. I know a lot of times, like the art of good business is that, everyone has to walk away from the table someone unhappy. Because if you walk away with everything you want, that means you fleece the other team and the other team got worked over. So you got to come into the negotiation like, you know what? We might have to give up 1 first-round pick, but we're not going to give up 2. You might want 2 first-round picks, but you're only going to get 1, but you get enough. And I think that deal that I saw earlier is like Paul George, PJ Tucker for Mitchell Robinson. Here it is. I'm pulling it up right now. Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, Bogdanovich, this year's 24th overall pick and 2026 overall first-round pick. I would say you keep one of your first-round picks, but I'd make that deal. If I'm the Clippers, I'd make that deal. Bring, Julius Randle back to California. He was a Laker for a while. I think he still has enough talent to be an all-star. You open up a new building. I think the drop-off from Paul George to Julius Randle, I know you don't really rock with Julius Randle like that.
I mean, I don't know. Julius Randle and the Clippers, in my mind, sound like it just go together, like they belong together.
I mean, like I said, it just makes sense. I think he just gives you a different look than Paul George, and it gives Paul George an opportunity to play on the big stage for the last few years of his career. Because I don't know how long these guys are going to play. Eventually, as we talk about the draft, some of these guys are going to have to rise to the occasion and start taking some of these headlines over, so we can have other players to talk about. Zach LaVine, he's been on the trading block since Trump was president. Like I don't know what I don't know if his attitude, because like I said, we talked about building the perfect basketball players. Athletic, I think he goes about 6'6", 6'7", can score at will. Confidence is never shaken. It just doesn't seem that either he gets with the right team or coach, but I like to see somebody make a move for him. Maybe Miami, if they're going to get rid of Jimmy Butler. Maybe you bring, because maybe he's considered a headache. Maybe he's considered a guy that doesn't really get along with the team. I
Well, it
think
would help if he
Miami,
played too.
yeah. So sometimes he might. I think he might be able to play. Sometimes it's like I'm not going to play, and then he does get injured and he misses like 30 or 40 games, and it's like damn. But you get into Miami, you get him out of Chicago, you get him out of what seems to be not a very functioning organization. They went from championship and allure in this era where Jordan and the Bulls were just dominating the airways to just subpar mediocrity for 25 years. And it's like, how do you go from that for that long? I get it that you have a dip, but for a quarter century, like to never like a couple of years with Derrick Rose years with the Thibodeau years, but it just seems like make some moves, make some trades. I want to see something splashy.
So what do you think about the Giddy for Caruso? Because I mean, that was the first trade that they've made in the last 3 years.
I don't know. We talked about this during the playoffs. Like I said, or we talked about the end of season recap for OKC. I was like, if anybody's going to move, I think it would have been Giddy. I think he just lifted right out because what you were getting from the other guys that, yeah, Giddy 6'7", 6'8", can handle the ball, can run the point, but it's like, I didn't need that from you. And what they needed in the Dallas series was like, can you hit some shots? And if you can't hit shots, can you play aggressive defense like Lou Dort? And he wasn't giving you either one of those. And then you, like I said, you immediately have a replacement. And then when you make the trade and you get Caruso back, it's like you've already upgraded. And I think that's a bad deal for Chicago because I don't know what you're going to get out of Giddey. What's your expectation for him?
So for
unless you
me,
plan on purging a lot more players as the next couple of weeks go by.
So for me, I don't know if the Bulls are trying to blow it up, but wait until next year. So you get LaVine out of there. Maybe DeRozan walks because he's a free agent. Giddey comes in for this year, but he's going to be due to get paid next year. So maybe you let him walk next year. And then you just have a whole ton of cap money sitting there waiting to be played with. Because when I look at the Bulls right now, I just saw that they offered Patrick Williams his $13 million qualifying offer. So now he's a restricted free agent. They can match any offer that he receives. You have Kobe White, who was my sixth man of the year. Yeah. And, so does a Kobe White and Giddey backcourt work? Levine's going to be out of there. Vucevic is going to be another year older. So I don't know what the Bulls' game plan is. Like, I thought Billy Donovan would have been gone by now as well. So I just don't know what the Bulls are doing. But let's reverse it for a second and let's look at OKC. I love Alex Caruso going to OKC. Their defense is going to be that much better. They were
Reunited
already
with his coach.
Reunited with Mark Daigneault. And then you got, and I've been holding on to the fact that I would like to see OKC trade for Lauri Markkanen, and you're loaded and ready to go. You got your version of Boston, if you will. Where guys, because that's the problem
you
with
saying
OKC.
they still need Markkanen?
I think so.
Could they get him for just draft picks, or they need to give up a body?
That's going to be the question. I think they could get him for somebody. I mean, they still got guys like Isaiah Joe, sitting on the bench, and Utah is another one of those teams that I can't figure out what Utah is doing. Are they tanking? Are they just kicking the can down the road? Because there's rumors now.
Home games.
Well, that too, but there's also rumors now that Colin Sexton is, on the potentially on the trade block. So, if you're trying to trade Sexton, I would figure marketing's on the table because you just signed John Collins last year. So somebody's got to be the odd man out.
Danny Ainge is the GM, and he's calling the shots in Utah, right?
Yes.
He's kind of greedy. I don't know if you get marketing for just draft capital, especially considering that if you give them marketing, they're probably going to be number one or somewhere in number one seed. They're gonna, like I said, they're gonna look like Boston West.
Right.
With that kind of lineup with Chet, SGA, Caruso, marketing like
Jalen Williams.
I didn't even got to their defensive players. I'm talking about like the top four.
Well,
like,
I mean, maybe you give up. Maybe you give up Isaiah Joe and somebody like Poku or the other Jalen Williams.
But it's Danny Ainge is gonna want blood. He's gonna want his pound of flesh in order to make this deal, because you're essentially you give them that lineup, you're giving them the West.
Unless you're trying to tank. Because next year, Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, those kind of guys are coming into the draft versus this year's draft.
Then you lose the lottery and you draft in 5th.
Hey, but next year's draft is supposed to be what we wish this year's draft would be.
Yeah. Lauri Markkanen and the OKC basically gives them the West. Like I don't even think it's. I think that's 60. I think that's 61, 62 wins.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because it would make them so dynamic offensively, and like this, they would look essentially just like Boston. They'd have a tough, hard-nosed defender who can score in Caruso. You have SGA, who's your star, Chet Holmgren, who's your unicorn, Markkanen, who was like the first kind of wave of this, this tweener European kind of player, a lot like Porzingis. And you could just kind of put them anywhere. You got to space the floor. You got to defend. And then on top of that, I haven't even got to Williams and Dort and all the guys that are going to play tough on-ball defense and still get their shots off, because we talked about how deep they went. They went like 11
don't
deep.
Forget my rookie from Kentucky, Cason Wallace. Yeah.
If Giddey hits those threes, I think they beat Dallas. Like if he hits those open shots, I think it gets guys going. But it just got to the point where you couldn't play him in long stretches because he wasn't knocking down these open shots. I like how Tim Hardaway Jr. looked in Dallas. I think Dallas wins 1 or 2 more games, or maybe they go back to Dallas 1-1 if Hardaway can knock down some shots and you can keep him out there for 6, 7, 8 minutes. But you can only keep him out there 4 or 5 minutes because he's giving you nothing. And it just was like those are the moments where Boston would get their edge. And that was the same thing with Dallas. When Giddey was out there, he wasn't defending very well, and he wasn't getting you points. And then Hayward, you try to put him out there, he wasn't getting any run. But if you get them marking, I think you give him the West.
Right. And that's where, keeping it in the West for a second, something else that I saw before we went live was that the Houston Rockets are potentially trying to enter the Paul George sweepstakes, potentially enter the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes if such a thing exists. Well, I think that they're just trying to get a player that they can kind of say, we got the young guys, now we want the leader to push our chips forward. Obviously that's not gonna
and half real young.
Well, something else that I saw that was kind of odd was that potentially they were looking at making a trade with Memphis to swap picks and get Marcus Smart as well. And I'm like, well, you just brought in Dylan Brooks. And that was the whole thing with Memphis last year, bring in Marcus Smart, get rid of Brooks. And I don't think Houston's really trying to get rid of Dylan Brooks just yet. But all year long throughout the regular season, the Rockets were always tied to Mikal Bridges, but Brooklyn just doesn't want to trade him for whatever reason. Brooklyn doesn't want to trade Mikal Bridges. So, if they can't get Mikal Bridges, Jimmy Butler provides the old cagey vet, the leader that has willed teams to the finals, probably worse teams when you look at like the overall talent. Like obviously Heat culture is a thing, but just looking at the talent, because Houston's got Van Vliet, they got Jalen Green, Amen Thompson's, I think is going to be a star one day.
Jimmy Butler doesn't hide his disdain for situations very well. Case in point, and I probably would have been in the same boat. I saw a video, he was playing poker with some poker stars and some other celebrities.
Ryan Garcia,
and he was sitting next to Ryan Garcia. You can see it was like eating at him. Like, I want to hit this dude. And I get it. It was very annoying, but that's been Jimmy's knock, is like, once he gets sick of you, it's very vocal in public. We saw Minnesota, Jeff T telling the story about, you better pay me. And then he goes to Philly and it's the same thing. So it's like, I'm not saying that he, it's unfair criticism of him, but it could be a situation where he wears out his welcome. But when your talent is still top tier, you can have that kind of energy. You can take 4 bench players and beat the starters and talk slick and run out the tunnel and be in your car and leave when you're 20 something. You can't do that when you're 30 and kind of over the hill, where a rolled ankle keeps you out for 2 weeks, where, a thigh bruise, you can't snap right back from.
Soft tissue.
Something like that. So, like, just, like I said, these young guys have opportunities to step up. Still 2-1 in NHL in Florida, by the way. These young guys have opportunities. That's why, like, I don't understand why these teams are bringing in such old guys that are taking away time from their young guys. Like, 1 or 2 guys, I get it, but I'm not paying top dollar free agents to guys who are almost 30 or over 30 when I got 3 or 4 top 6 draft picks trying to make their way through the league.
Well, that's my problem with Houston in general, is that I do believe, and I know this is going to sound real counterintuitive, especially after we just got done talking about OKC. Houston just has too much. Like, they have too many guys that they are trying to develop, figure out what they are, and that are trying to find their place in the league, that are capable of scoring 25 points if you need to. Because, Van Vliet's a champion. He's a leader. You got to find room for Amen Thompson. Jalen Green was out here putting up 40 points this year. You got Jabari Smith. What is he going to be? What are you trying to do with him? You got Şengün. What are you trying to do with him?
I think it was
they just got too much.
Season was bad. By bringing in Dylan Brooks and Van Fleet is like, what are you trying to microwave? We say, like, you want to microwave a champ. Like, what are you doing by bringing in these 2 guys? Dylan Brooks can't shoot. He's not a threat to shoot. And he's not like he's really good defensively. He's just big.
He's just a pest.
He's just big and physical, which gets him in foul trouble. So now you got this big physical dude who can't score on the bench with 2 fouls in the first quarter more often than not. Right. I think they just had a bad offseason. I mean, even bringing in a coach that just got fired from his other team.
Right. And you still got, and I didn't even mention Tari Eason.
I get, give him a shot, but it's like, let it marinate. Like, let the whole story come out before you're like, oh, cool, he's available. Let's take him. Oh, he's available. Let's give him a big contract. Oh, he's available. And then it's like, all right, now we're gonna mix you with these young guys, this old coach, make it work. And they were nowhere near to be like near the playoff. They were fighting for the play-in. They had a nice little run after old boy had his, she had his baby. Yeah. But other than that, it was like,
so what do you want to see? What do you want to see from San Antonio?
I think San Antonio, I think they should get in the Trae Young conversation.
Okay.
Simply because they have a guy that's so generational dynamic around the rim that Trae Young, I think it would work there. DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, I don't think they work together because I don't think DeJounte is like a great shooter from the outside.
No, he's not.
Good creator, good size, but I don't think he doesn't give Trae Young the space he needs. I think Trae Young with Wemby, first of all, I think he will look for Wemby when he's cutting through the lane. I think he throws that lob to Wemby. I don't know how many San Antonio. I had to stop watching San Antonio games because I'm like, this dude is literally the tallest person in your sport right now in this league, running through the lane. His arms, I think his standing reach is probably 10 feet. Like, let's be realistic. You probably touch the rim flat.
At least for now, because we got that 7'9" freshman down at Florida right now.
That dude, Draymond Green, I'm having in the spin cycle. But like, it was so many opportunities where they just throw it up. So I think they should get into that. And I know, like, it kind of mixes my notion with the old guy and the young guy. I'm good with one old guy that's gonna make your young guy better.
And I mean, Trae's not even old though. You know what I mean? Like this is like year 5 or 6 for him. Yeah.
He's like Luka's age, around Luka's age.
Yeah, same draft.
So
yep.
I think that would be the move for San Antonio, because really, when you're young, you don't need to go crazy with all of the off-season moves when you have guys that can develop. Because, like I said, they're in the league. Give them the opportunity to develop. Don't bring in a bunch of guys. Like, they would not be a Paul George destination, in my opinion.
Right.
Even though it might be some Spurs fans like, yo, we should get Paul George. Nah, that's not the destination, I would think.
I'll get to Spurs. I'll get to the Spurs when we get to the draft. But I've also heard Trae Young's name mentioned with New Orleans. Potentially a Trae Young for Brandon Ingram type deal. And I think that could work out for both teams, because I think that CJ McCollum, his days are numbered anyway. Brandon Ingram, I think, needs a change of scenery. Like, I think New Orleans just needs to not necessarily start over, but they just need to adjust and do something, because they've been on the same path for the last few years, and we get the same result every year.
Yeah, so they've been playing or bust like for the last few years.
Yeah,
but they have like
injuries.
Injuries. They have real talent. But yeah, some teams might just need to straight up run it back. I don't think everybody needs to make a move. It just depends on how the money plays out. But some teams that are on the brink, like those teams that 1 through 5, and East or West, you should make the move, because I think 1 through 5, you make the right move, you're 1 or 2 the following year. If you're 8 or 9, you're not bringing in a guy and giving him $45-50 million a year and going from 8 to 1. Like, Luka's not available, Jason Tatum's not available, Jaylen Brown's not available, 2018 LeBron's not available. Like, these KD, I mean, maybe Phoenix moves KD, but even with that, they're going to want a king's ransom for KD, just because it's KD.
James Harden may be available,
but I don't think James Harden was a force multiplier. I don't know what he does now that markedly makes your team better. I think he's a great player. I think he'll be obviously a Hall of Famer. I just don't know what he brings to your team right now. If he goes to any team, any team.
I was thinking about it earlier. I can't even place him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have no idea, what team he would even be beneficial for right now.
Yeah, I don't know what team is good for him. Only thing I could think of is if he's flipped the switch that says, I'm gonna come off the bench. I think that opens up multiple teams, but I think he's still probably a $45-50 million a year guy in his head. And I think even his latest couple of contracts were
I know
in that range, 35 to 40 million. So
when he was looking for Philly, I think was 37.
So are you going to pay a guy 37 million to come off the bench? Doubt it.
Probably not.
Is a guy who expects to get paid 37 million going to go to the bench? Doubt it.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is because, like, if you're a team like, and I'm just throwing like a random team out there, think about somebody like Portland. What does he do for you? And, like, are you even at the point where adding him could put you in the playoffs? Probably not.
I don't even know if he gets, short of him getting you on TV, maybe you get that Portland LA game on NBA Tuesday night over, but you got to. But are they going to rather play the Lakers Phoenix game that night, or would they want to play the Portland Clippers game? The James Harden coming back, or whatever the case may be. Like, does he give you that? Because if he doesn't give you that, then I don't know what he gives you.
Yeah, another name that I have my eye on is De'Aaron Fox out in Sacramento. He's eligible for his extension, but the word on the street is he's not going to sign it until he see how the roster shapes up. They signed Malik Monk, re-signed him 4 years, $78 million, brought him back. So that's a good move for them, provided that he comes back from the injury healthy and everything like that. But now that's the new thing is him and Bam Adebayo are really good friends. Could Miami be a player for De'Aaron Fox down the road? Now that would be something big to fit, what you're talking about, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm looking at Donovan Mitchell, because I figured that Cleveland would sign him by now. It hasn't happened just yet. OG Anunoby declined his offer, so now he's a free agent. So egg on the Knicks' face. Does OG end up somewhere else, or
are they allowed to match a qualifying offer, or is he just straight up?
No, he's just straight up a free agent from what I was reading.
I mean, that's the price of going all in. I like to gamble. So when you go all in, you get the cards, or you don't. So they're waiting for that ace on the river, and if it doesn't come, like I said, you got to make the next move. You have to look around instead of be like, you know what, this guy jammed us up. You had a good run. You got a number 2 seed. Guys just got injured. You beat Indiana if your team is healthy. So you got to lock that in. And I think it's probably hard when you play for as long as you play. I mean, like we said, the NBA has no offseason. The finals were a few days ago. They already started talking free agents. Guys are, inking contract and making deals. Then you go right into summer training camps. We got the Olympics now, so guys will be playing then. Go straight from the Olympics into pseudo preseason basketball, which is very short, and then the season starts. So you work, tirelessly for 10 or 11 months with a very, very short break. Depends on when you went out. If you didn't make the playoffs, so you've been out since April, you're scouting. So you got 8 or 9 months you put into this. You just got to really sit down and be like, all right, cool. Are we a player away if we make this move, or do we develop one of these guys already in our program?
See, and I wonder if the Knicks are with the OG Anunoby news. I wonder if the Knicks are the team to watch in the Paul George sweepstakes. From the standpoint of, theoretically, you should be able to get him for cheaper than what OG's looking for because of age and all that. So maybe you could get like a little discount, and you could convince yourself and your fans of, look at this. We bought in Paul George. Like, you can't say that we aren't making the effort. You know what I mean? I got a guy, theoretically, he's older. He's not the player that he once was, but I got a player now that can match up with Tatum or Brown.
Right.
I have that guy that has playoff experience, been to the conference finals, a few times in his career. So, is that a move that the Knicks can sell and say that we're trying to still take a step forward? Or is he too old now, or not? He's so far down his decline that it's going to be looked at as you tried it.
All right. This is the thing with Paul George. Projected salary might start, according to ESPN.com last week.
Yeah.
$49.3 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's the negotiation starting point.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think OG's getting that.
No, I think they offered him, from what I was hearing, if it was correct, I think they offered him around 35.
I would just go back to OG and try to give him a better deal.
That goes back to your point about the Julius Randle. If you move Julius Randle, yeah.
If you do a sign and trade, you can move him, then by all means. Because I think Knicks fans will be good with Paul George, even at 34. But
I mean, it's a name, right?
It's New York City. It's a name. It's New York City. It's Madison Square Garden. Can he get you 60 games? Can he get you 65 games? That's, to be determined. That's the problem with trying to sign these guys. But if you think you are a player away, if the Knicks think that they are Paul George and PJ Tucker away from beating Boston, then you make that move. But if you
think that,
that's what I'm saying. If you look at your roster and you think hey, we can get rid of Julius Randle, Bogdanovich, and Mitchell Robinson in the next couple of draft picks, and that gets us on the precipice of competing with Boston. If you believe that, make the move. If you don't believe that, then don't make that move, because Boston's going to get, I think they got Porzingis next year for cheap, Drew Holiday for cheap, Derek White still cheap. They're going to pay a lot of money to Tatum and Brown. Imagine Pritchard probably loves his role in Boston. I can't see him trying to go anywhere else for money. Or like because if they give you more money, you go to another place, like you go to like Chicago or somewhere like that, or Memphis, and you're trying to put up 8, 9, 10 threes a game. I don't think you're gonna get that
Well,
kind of
this is
action
where we're going
somewhere
to
else.
find out.
That's he's like 5'10".
Well, this is where we're going to find out about the aprons and what teams are willing to go into the aprons and what teams are going to try to navigate their ways back below, the new luxury tax rules and all that. So we'll see that kind of play out during the course of this offseason. So that's why I got my eye on a team like Philly, because Tobias Harris is going to be gone, and that's why I think Paul George could work there, just from the standpoint of you're not asking Paul George to come there and be the alpha, or, like to be, because Maxi's trying to ascend now. You know what I mean?
Correct.
But the question is if I bring in Paul George, does he stunt Maxi? Because he's a ball handler as well, and you get into that part of the fit. I think it'll fit okay. I think Paul George is one of those Kevin Durant type dudes that you could just assimilate almost anywhere. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be a problem, but I just wonder what, because if Embiid misses games,
Well, if you go to the
what,
if you go to 3 of them, I just don't know if you can have a $50 million third option. It just doesn't seem like a wise business move to pay your
right.
third option $50 million. But Philly's got to do something. I don't know. Maybe they move Embiid and start over with Maxi.
That would define something big.
Because, I mean, if you think about it, what you need to put around Embiid for you guys to be successful, it's not out there. You had draft opportunities. You drafted guys. A lot of them aren't on the roster anymore. You had top 3 picks, top 4 picks, top 5 picks.
So just to back up for a second, you don't think OG would be a good fit there if he were to end up there?
If you want to go 47 and 35, 50 and 32, and get to the second round of the playoffs, then you bring in one of those. But I just don't know if Philly has the makeup to be more than a second round exit.
Oh, it's over. The Florida Panthers are your Stanley Cup champions.
They avoided one of the greatest collapses in the history.
Yeah, there you go. You know what I'm saying?
Connor McDavid doesn't get a ring.
I don't know if that calls for titties or not, but
they'll just check Twitter. Check Twitter in 4 or 5 minutes.
But as like I peel this back and think about it, there are other names out there to whereas if you believe that Embiid is still going to be a 32 point a game guy, Maxi is coming through with 27, 28 points or whatever. You still got people out there potentially like Bobby Portis, that could come and be a significant role player in the front court to help him beat out. So maybe you don't need to go Paul George and just go, I'm going to throw the sink at something and try to make it stick. But, you could get a Bobby Portis, you could re-sign Buddy Hield, and, maybe like you're looking at little pieces around what you already have that gives Boston a different look. Because I think what's going to happen is the Golden State thing, where everybody tried to out Golden State. So teams are going to try to build their miniature Celtic and try to out Boston. And obviously that's not the way to go. But since we're talking about the NBA, and before we get to this draft, what are your thoughts on the one and only JJ Redick?
Man, I talked about this with my pops yesterday. I don't know if it's going to work.
Okay.
There's no evidence to support that it's going to work.
I'm all about liquor failure.
What he said was more damning. He said if LeBron didn't go there, or after LeBron leaves, he's like, if LeBron didn't go there, they would be Detroit. He was like, the organization, he's like, they would look a lot like Detroit. And I was like, nah, because it's LA, they would be able to just sell the jersey and get a guy in. But what he's saying is it does have merit. Without LeBron coming there, without being able to keep Kobe, because Kobe's ready to go to Chicago. He talked about that plenty of times because he wanted to get rid of Bynum. They figured out a way to keep him happy. They gave him the money on the back end of his career. But he said that him and Vanessa were looking at private schools in Chicago. Like he was ready to go. Like he had it all mapped out. They were looking at houses and private schools. Like that's how you know a man is ready to move.
Right.
When he's looking at private schools for his kids in Chicago, he was ready to get up out of LA. But he stayed. They made the Paul deal. We talked about the Jerry West handoff, very similar to like the McHale, Danny Ainge, Boston handoff. They got KG the boss. You know how it goes.
Right.
You play golf with a guy long enough to get you a good deal. LA got LeBron because LeBron wanted to go to LA because of Magic. Then Magic leaves. And then he's like, I want AD. They clear the cabinets to get AD. They get a chip out of it. But they run their organization a lot like a pseudo-successful organization down in Texas, different sport.
Right.
The Cowboys. I get, I wish I was in a position to where I had a successful business and I can hire my sons to be a part of that business. But in the same sense, I would also hire people who aren't related to me. I would put people in position who's done this for different types of corporations. I'd hire a guy who ran, Microsoft Europe to come in and do something. Like just get a different perspective. And I think LA, they just keep doing the same thing. So even if LeBron and JJ Redick didn't converse about the hiring, whether I believe that or not, I don't care. It's irrelevant. The fact that you just hired a guy with no experience who's connected personally and socially to your best player is exact same thing you're already doing. Kurt Rambis should not be calling the shots, or his wife, for a basketball organization that he was mediocre for when he was a coach. Jeannie Buss, granted, she got the team from her dad. She fired her brother and then has Rob Pelinka, and only expertise he has is like he was Kobe's agent. So you keep running these same circles, and then you're going to wonder, like, what's going to happen? You're not going to be able to move any of these guys. You're going to have to overpay LeBron, get him to stay, or he can literally walk. Like, he can literally walk if he wanted to. I'm pretty sure the private jet from Dallas to LA isn't going to cost him that much if he wants to go to Dallas.
Sometimes I feel like Jeannie wants him to.
What I think is, I thought the same thing for Dallas. I don't think they have people in the room. Like I said, I've been talking about this at work. I'm like, you guys don't have old heads in these meetings that say this is stupid. I've seen this go wrong 12 years ago. I don't think there's anyone in the room. Everyone's thinking optimistically. If we hire JJ, he's going to be great. No one's like, yo, what do we hire a dude who has no coaching experience? Only coaching experience he has is playing for good coaches. No NBA finals runs, no like that's it. That's all he has. That's all he really has is that he's played for great coaches.
But see, that's the problem, because in sports, we know that a lot of these teams go to the well. They go to something that worked in the past and they try to recreate magic. So what we saw, magic, see what I did there? Yeah. But what they try to, but what they do is, you go back to 1981, 82 or whatever. You got Paul Westhead wins the NBA title. Then he gets into it with Magic Johnson. They fall off. They have these arguments. Magic asks for a trade. And then lo and behold, you got Pat Riley waiting in the wings, who was the assistant coach. But prior to being the assistant coach, he was calling Laker games. So, he was sitting there, calling games just like JJ was calling games, except for JJ was doing it on a national level. And then Pat Riley
he only did that for 1 year.
Right. And Riley,
he got the NBA finals.
Yeah. And somehow Pat Riley became the Don, the Godfather, XYZ. So if you're a Laker, because like you said, Kurt Rambis, Jeannie Buss, you got all these
Magic
people
Johnson,
that were there then.
Great coach, sucked. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar never wanted to coach. Steve Nash went to Brooklyn. Terrible run. Derek Fisher, terrible run. Isaiah Thomas, terrible run. Steve Kerr was the only one that had a successful run.
Yeah.
But he had three.
Mark Jackson
guys.
was okay. They just got rid of him before we saw
Mark Jackson built that team, and Steve Kerr took it. Mark Jackson took it 90 yards, and then Steve Kerr got it. First and 10.
Jalen Hurts them.
first and goal from the 10, and took him over the hump.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can hire whoever you want. And I get that sometimes hires are just kind of meant to. You could have got Sam Cassell. He has all the experience. You could have got Sam
Baltimore.
Cassell. But you just wanted to just kind of keep it Cali, keep it pretty.
Well, they wanted Tyronn Lue, you know what I mean? But
you weren't going to get Tyronn Lue from the Clippers.
The Clippers gave him that extension.
Don't piss my pocket and tell me it's raining. You know damn well Steve Ballmer is not letting that dude leave the building. Really? It's like, imagine I bring a third friend onto this show, and then he think he's gonna take my spot, or he gonna take your spot. Man, we could do this. Like, no, you're not. I'm not getting rid of Mike for you. We've been doing this for years. I just started dealing with you. Like, no. And then on top of that, Tyronn Lue, they offered him 3 years, $18 million a few years ago. It's not like people forgot that. There's no way in the hell they were getting Tyronn Lue. They weren't getting Hurley. They were just putting up these smoke screens. They live in LA. They live in a fantasy land. Everyone who talks about LA is like, listen, Hollywood and people who associate with life in Hollywood live in fantasy land. I always ask, like, if paparazzi bothers you when you go to this restaurant, why do y'all go every single day? Why do you eat lunch at the Grove? Why do I know what the Grove is? Because people like this whole glamour thing. I think JJ looks like the glamorous pick. He's 40. He's handsome. He talks basketball. He talks smart. He has this kind of arrogant, I went to Duke, I'm from Central Virginia, arrogance to him. Like, he has that, and that's what they want.
And oh, by the way, LeBron is my boy.
LeBron's my friend. He's a polar opposite of Darvin Ham. Darvin Ham just looked angry. He looked like a football player. Like, he didn't look the part. And I think in LA, they want you to look the part. And I think they hired him like they were casting the part of a head coach, not actually hiring a head coach.
Yeah. So then, of course, we take it over to Lake Erie, and the Cleveland Cavaliers have hired their new coach, Kenny Atkinson, a former Brooklyn Net fame. He's been on the Golden State Warriors staff the last couple of years under Steve Kerr. So what do you think about that hire?
I think it's a good move because it's a smart move.
Okay.
You have a team that has potential. You got to figure out what you're going to do with your star. How you keep Donovan Mitchell happy. How do you get Evan Mobley the ball? How do you, like I said, they have pieces. Granted, most of these guys right now aren't going to be able to compete with Boston. But I think you have a good core foundation. I didn't agree with them getting rid of the last coach. So if they're looking at their roster and they think that they should have done more in the playoffs, that's going to be a problem. So I think he might get scapegoat. I tried to find the details of his contract. Couldn't find it. Like, JJ got 4 years, $32 million, $8 million a year. Seems about right for a guy with zero experience. Atkinson, I imagine, is probably going to get, figure he gets 9 at least. If I'm his agent, I'm like, yo, you got to get me more than the guy that has no coaching experience. You got to get him more than that. Like, you can't be like, all right, you get 4 years, $28 million. Like, nah.
Yeah, and Atkinson has a reputation of being a good developmental coach. We saw what he did in Brooklyn. Started out with 20 wins, got him up to 42, got him up to 42 in the playoffs with Karis LeVert and the gang, Dinwiddie. So he has coaching chops. Now, his overall record ain't much to talk about, but let me
118 and 190 or something.
Yeah, but let me back that up for a second, if you will. Because the first roster that he had in Brooklyn included such gems as Quincy Acey, Anthony Bennett, Boban Bogdanovic, Trevor Booker, Yogi Ferrell, Randy Foye, Archie Griffin, so on and so forth. Rondé Hollis Jefferson, so he was starting from scratch for real. Yeah. And he got that team, to the playoffs that
I think he had Jared Dudley out there.
Yeah, we thought they were coming.
Jimmy Butler, yeah.
We thought they were going to be one of those scrappy teams that was going to be in our ecosystem for a few years. But then once they were able to, talk to Kevin Durant, talk to Kyrie, they were like, I don't know if this is going to work.
Now they're the popular girl in school, and they don't want the ragamuffins anymore.
Like, they treated him. They treated him like Kelly Stafford did Joe Cox once. Matt got his shit together. So that's basically what happened there. But but we got that going on. I think it's a good move. Cleveland's got some roster questions to figure out now. You know what I mean? Donovan Mitchell is due for his contract. So are you going to move Darius Garland? And from what I hear, Donovan Mitchell was very involved in Atkinson getting this job. Then you got Jared Allen. Is he out of here? What are you going to do with Evan Mobley as far as finding ways to make him more effective and efficient? The way that I think of him, at least.
Look at what Minnesota did. They just got to look at what Minnesota did. Like, look how Minnesota worked their small guard Mike Conley, their star shooting guard with Ant, two bigs down low, and then you get a guy on the wing that could actually knock down a shot because LeVert was just not it. Like, they were just leaving him wide open, door open, unlocked, and it was like you couldn't still come in, couldn't hit a boat, couldn't hit
I figure he might keep LeVert though, since they got the Brooklyn history. We'll see.
But I don't think you really need to reinvent the wheel. Like, the wheel is a shape. You just got to get better tread on it.
So of course, and then we got the Pistons out here, like looking for a coach. Apparently James Borrego is the leader there, but we got a draft in 2 days. So, it might behoove you.
Last week.
I know.
You fired your coach last week and it's a draft. You got
and you fired the GM, it just
is Trajan Langdon really going to come in with this grand plan? And that's
apparently
you got to pay the coach $65 million.
Well, Trajan Langdon
not work for you.
He at least has the history with Borrego working together in New Orleans. So, maybe we got some little, you're my buddy in my network. So, he more than likely will be the head coach. But speaking of the draft.
So you fired coach, or you get the new GM, he fires the coach and he hires his boy. Sounds like collusion to me.
I mean, hey, what I'm saying? That's how America's been working since its existence, right?
Yeah, you can fire me for $65 million.
Jimbo Fisher status.
I'd buy the courtside seats at the Pistons game and just not have people sitting in them.
Yeah.
So just to be every game that they on TV, I'm buying a section of seats out so it's empty.
So we got this NBA draft starting on Wednesday, continuing into Thursday, 2-day draft for the first time, which is odd.
Joker got drafted during the commercial break in the second round, but
you would have thought. TV. You would have thought next year's draft would be the draft to go to 2 days, with all the talent. But it is what it is. You got to start somewhere.
Maybe they're trying it out to see how it works, see if it's even effective.
So I'm wondering if. And I know we do this with every draft. It doesn't matter if it's NFL draft. Doesn't matter if it's NBA draft. We always talk about like trade. But if this draft is perceived to be as bad as we've been being told, there might be some actual trades. Now, you might not see players move so much, but you might see some pick movement, as people are like, hey, I like this guy. He's not, I'm the 6th pick. He'll be there at 11. I could trade back and all that kind of stuff like that, because realistically, we know that one of Sarr or Ricochet is going to go 1 or 2 unless Donovan Clingan comes through and crushes the buildings, because I know Atlanta likes him a lot. But
yeah,
those are the 3 that are probably going to go number 1. Nobody else in that conversation.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't. Like, you're more the college sports expert of the show. I'm more of the logical thinker. I put all of my, if I'm in the top 5, I'm taking whatever, I'm trying to take somebody's offer. Like, what are you trying to give up to get this pick? Because if you look at some of these guys, we're going to talk about the overtime elite, the G League guys, their team records are terrible. They're all projects. Most of them are small. There's still a lot of big guys in the NBA. Like, I use example, Sarr. He is probably 7'1", 201. Paul George is like 6'8", 240. So if he has to like bang and get switched on to Paul George, he's not going to back him down. He got you about 30 or 40 pounds. And most defensive players are built like that. You got to guard Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown's like 6'7", 220, 230. Like these guys are big, grown man, muscled up dudes. Even Julius Randle's a big guy, 6'8", 6'9". Jalen Brunson's a small guy, but he's bigger than 200 pounds. So you got these 7-footers that keep coming in the league thinking they could do it at 200 pounds. It's like, I'm not taking you second, third, fourth, fifth if you're not built to defend. I mean, I need you big enough to defend, some of these guys that can step out and shoot threes. I need you big enough to defend Anthony Edwards. Like if I'm drafting you as a forward and you're smaller than the best guards in our league, it's like,
well,
how
that's
much
why
weight can you really put on?
Well, that's why if I'm Washington, I'm hoping that the reports are true and I do get Sarr, because you're in the middle of a rebuild anyway. What are you going to do with Kuzma? You have holes everywhere. So, this is a perfect
Some
project.
Of these teams have no hope, man.
I know.
It's dire for the NBA is going to have to either get rid of some teams and combine them, because it is dire. If you look across the league, it was Detroit and Washington were out of the playoffs in December.
Well, Boston won more games in this playoff run than Detroit and Washington won all 82 games. So that's first and foremost. You know what I mean? But, looking at Washington, they drafted Bilal Coulibaly last year, another project. So you got Kyle Kuzma, which you have to figure out what you want to do. I'm sure they're going to get phone calls about Denny Avila. There's rumors that Tim Hardaway is the Vegas leader, or the Wizards are the Vegas leader to get Tim Hardaway Jr. So that shows you the state of the Wizards right there. We
just watched him get hot one game and then every other game be cold as Antarctica.
Yeah, so as a Wizards fan, I would like to have Ricochet, you know what I mean? But just being realistic, I know that Sarr hasn't worked out with Atlanta. His people haven't talked to Atlanta at all. But I've also learned that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because Paolo Banchero didn't talk to Orlando at all. Everybody thought Jabari Smith was going number one. So we're in that smokescreen stage where people are just reporting everything and people are running with it as fact.
I'm getting a guy from college. I'm getting a guy from the NCAA, unless he's generationally talented or just so dynamic.
And that's why I brought up Donovan Clingan, because it looks like
me a guy that's played against other real competition. I'm not saying these European players aren't the creme de la creme of their league, but a lot of them, it's not a lot of Lucas. I know It's been a lot of conversation about all these foreign players taking all these spots. Not really. Give me Joker and Luka, and then give me a next best white foreign player, because Canada doesn't count. Canada is North America.
Right.
You got Markkanen. Like, where do you have him? Sabonis, maybe. But Sabonis isn't making teams better. He's just a really good basketball player.
Right.
He's just as good as any other, just as good as Bradley Beal is for the Suns. Like, Bradley Beal isn't like, he's not changing your franchise. He's like a guy who's going to get you 20-something points. Well, in Sabonis' case, around 20 points, 10 rebounds. Bradley Beal is going to get you 23, 24 points, 4 or 5 rebounds, 3 or 4 assists. Just a really, really good guy, potential all-star. But for the most part, these foreign players don't come over here and dominate. It should be a lot of South American players. Remember that they had their run. Ginobili's and Scolas and all these guys that play for Argentina, they had their run. But eventually it fades when you keep coming in the league 200 pounds and you got to bang with, real, like Scuba Henderson, granted, didn't do himself any favors with his rookie performance, but he looks and built like a grown man.
Right.
Like, I think you can get that around. Donovan Mitchell, short, stocky, strong guy. Like, you can't just keep thinking that, because this guy's foreign and he puts up these stats. Because even when you look at their stats, they're putting up like 17 points, 7 rebounds. It's not like they're out there dropping 40. And it's like, this guy. I'm like, give me the dude at Tennessee that's getting 12 or 13 points, 8 or 9 rebounds. I'll take him, SEC tested, American basketball player, over a foreign guy who's playing against a bunch of dudes that won't even make a great, a top league in Europe. I just think the whole fascination with these European players is kind of being, it's an extension of like the Luka effect.
Yeah. So Washington slag for flag is what I hear there, but Atlanta, like I said, Clint Capella is allegedly on the trade block. So that's where maybe you could talk yourself into Donovan Clingan. That gives you that national champion, back-to-back national champion. This year he was the anchor, so you have that college competition that you're talking about, 7-2 or so. So, how effective is he going to be unless you're looking for like that Rudy Gobert guy? Because I'm not sure what the centers offensively are doing right now, from
They
that
want them all
standpoint.
to shoot threes. Everybody doesn't need to shoot threes. Like, I get it that you live by 3 and die by 3, and Boston shot a lot of threes.
Right.
But so did OKC, and so did Dallas, and so did the Clippers, and so did all these other teams. And you still need playmakers around the rim. When they couldn't stop the bleeding in game 3, Jaylen Brown hit a 15-foot mid-range jumper to put them up 5.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't hit a 27-foot 3.
And
I mean, Kyrie Irving, a guard, hit the 3 in the championship against the
Warriors.
The Warriors. It wasn't Kevin Love or Chris Bosh I hear shooting on. Like, Ray Allen hit the 3. Like, guards shoot the 3s. Chris Bosh, big man, got rebound. Like, that's a simple basketball game. I don't understand why everyone's so enamored with the whole 3-point shot. Like, it's cool until you get a guy out there shooting 22% like Luka did in the finals.
Right.
It's great when they go in.
So for me, the draft starts at number 4. Because one of the two Frenchmen are going 1. They're going 1-2 in some order. Sarr and Ricochet. Number 3, everybody seems to have Reed Shepherd penciled into the Rockets. I think the Rockets could trade out of that pick, but number 4 is where it starts for me, because what does San Antonio do? I like Stephon Castle right there, so that's why I said I was going to wait till we got to the draft, because you brought up the Trae Young thing. I like Stephon Castle there, and maybe him and Trae could play together. I don't know, but I like Castle from the standpoint
of you do with Murray.
Well,
you talking about the San Antonio? I'm thinking Atlanta trade.
Yeah, I'm talking about for the Spurs, because you have Wemby as your front court anchor. You could have Castle as your back court anchor. I think he's going to be one of those, like, best case scenario, and this is way down the road. Best case scenario, he becomes a SGA kind of guy. I don't know if he'll ever be a 3-point shooter that, maybe he could knock him down, but I don't think he's ever going to be we got a game plan for his shot. I don't think he's ever going to be that guy.
Does Pop have that developmental stitch now? Does he still have that where he can take these young guys and build them? Because I mean, it's a lot of years, and it's like, do I really want to keep doing this?
That's a great question. If not, maybe you go Buzelis there instead of Steph Castle. Or if you're the Spurs, could you trade up for another one of the Frenchmen? So there's a whole lot in play here where, we're going to find out real quick what San Antonio's plan for Wemby is, depending on the maneuvers that they make in the draft. Because they got 2 picks in the top 10. They got number 4 and number 8. So they have a chance to solidify early to us. This is what we're going to look like next year.
We're going forward this way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where I think the draft starts there. You got Detroit at number 5 for the 3rd straight year. And I have no idea what Detroit does, because, you got Cade Cunningham, you got Jaden Ivey in the backcourt, you got Marcus Sasser last year, who might be at the point where he's good enough to where you think about trading Ivey. You got Jalen Duren in the front court, alongside of the big ticket, James Wiseman and, and Bagley. And, so Detroit has a bunch of the same player everywhere, or they have a bunch of, they don't need a draft pick. You know what I mean? They just need to potentially ship somebody, get a Levine or somebody like that. They need a veteran. They need somebody that could shake up the minutes, because they're basically.
I feel bad for some of these NBA GMs, because I'm just looking like there's no reprieve for you.
Yeah, and you still got a Sar Thompson that you're trying to fit into the rotation.
That's the thing. You didn't even mention. I was like, I'm like, did he say Thompson? I don't think he said Thompson. It's like you're in a position where you're just in this basketball purgatory because of poor decisions, but it's their own fault. You fired your coach last week and paid him $65 million. I can't imagine that you're going to make a great decision this week in your draft. Like it just doesn't make any sense. So
something
like you
that
said,
I heard,
trade it out, take whatever you can get from another team that could potentially help you, even if it only helps you 10%.
right?
Get the 29 wins. Like do that.
You know
Get
what?
something going, because if you don't, then you because all you got right here, you said at what is that 5 for Detroit?
Yeah. And
They
I didn't
got
even mention Isaiah Stewart.
5 for Detroit. They got them taking another guard in this mock draft that I got off USA Today. So one guy got him Cody Williams out of Colorado. Another guy got this Buzelis out of G League Unite, which we could talk about the record. They went 2-32 last year. 2-32, but they got two top 5 to 7 ish.
And
they went 2-32. So it's like you're gonna take a guy who has no idea how to win at a professional level, even though it's like
he's on video saying, if I would have shot better this year, I would be the number 1 draft pick.
So now you're gonna take that guy and go and add him to one of the worst seat teams in the league.
So something that I heard was, if Clingan is still there, maybe they go Clingan and trade Duren to somebody like Memphis. You know what I mean? But Isaiah Stewart is on the trade block too. So Detroit is basically under reconstruction as we speak. So like, yeah, I'm trading down, or maybe I'm not even trading down. Maybe I'm just like, can I get a player and you take this pick and one of my players?
If you take the best player available that actually fills a need and develop this 6'6", 6'7", and 6'8" guards.
That's the problem. I don't know what their needs are. I don't know what their needs are, because they're about to give Cade a big contract, but I don't think, the whole Trae Young, DeJounte Murray thing, I don't think him and Ivy fit together very well. You know what I mean? Then you got a star that you're trying to fit in,
a pick they didn't need.
A pick they didn't need.
Another pick they didn't need. So,
but I like him. I like him.
You'd like him. It's the same. We'll talk about it with the Falcons and Kirk Cousins. We like Michael Penix. It just, you didn't need him.
Right.
Like you just drafted a guy. And then, like I said, if you're going to go with a rotation of, like the Portland Trailblazers back in the day when they had essentially a starting lineup with Greg Anthony, Rod Strickland, Rasheed Wallace. They had like a starting lineup coming off the bench. It's like, that's too many guys.
Right.
There's too many guys to get involved.
Especially in this NBA.
Yeah. Now, if you got guys that come in and they give me a good 12 minutes. Give me 6 hard minutes in the first half, 6 hard minutes in the second half. I'll give you the green light on corner threes. Sam Hauser, Pritchard. These are your moments that you come in. Isaiah Joe and OKC, what they were trying to do with Hardaway in the recent finals run. What the Lakers are trying to do with all their matchups and like lineups they were putting out there. Just get guys out there and get them some sweat equity on the floor and see what works, instead of just bringing in another guy saying like Ivy doesn't work. Like, yo, he was a scoring champ.
Right.
He was a scorer. He was scoring the ball in college. The rim is the same height. Yes, the defense is different, but it's like he has that innate ability. Everyone's not great scorers. We saw it. You see it in the playoffs when it's like, what Kyrie was doing around the rim, everybody can't do.
Right.
So if you have a guy that can do that, you need to find a way to get him on the floor. You don't draft another guy who takes minutes away from him and try to pay him all.
Right. Then you got.
But this is why these same teams are in the top 10 every year.
Yeah, and then you got the Hornets at 6. With a new head coach, Charles Lee. What do you do there? Steph Castle could be an option there if he's still on the board. Outside of that,
what are you doing with LaMelo? Because I think there was, once again, it's just these teams either put themselves in purgatory or they don't have an advisor in the room that's independent. Like
Right.
his check is you can't fire him. A person that just gives their opinion, his or her opinion. Like,
Right.
you guys are making bad moves. Don't fire this coach. It doesn't make any sense to fire this coach when he had a relationship with our best player, whatever the case may be, or we got to pay him $65 million. That's a lot of money that we're just wasting on a coach because we got to hire another coach who knows that we like to fire coaches, so he's going to demand more money.
Yep.
To ensure he secures his bag.
And then you got Portland coming up after that, who looks like they like Zach Edey, but Portland, just like the Spurs, they pick at 7 and 14. So if they want Edey, they could probably get him at 14. So maybe 7 could be Jalen Williams' little brother, Cody, my guy from Colorado, who I like a lot, but he needs to gain some weight and probably get a little bit more experience. But Portland's in that same position like Washington, where, you got DeAndre Ayton for what? You're probably going to try to get rid of him if you can. They got Brogdon, Simon, Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp all in the backcourt. So you don't need another guard. So, like these teams keep putting themselves in this position. There's only so many minutes that you're going to play these guys like we're talking about. So moving down the line, somewhere around that 8 to 10 range, I like Devin Carter, Big East Player of the Year out of Providence, improved his 3-point shot. He played 3 years of college. He went from 26 to 29 to 37% this year. He's only 6'3", so that's going to be the problem there because I don't know if he's a full-time point. No, but I was going to say,
I think NBA GM's kind of like, oh, he's only 6'3", Steph 6'3".
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know if he's a full-time point guard. That's where I was going with that. So he might be too small to be a full-time 2, but I don't know if he's a full-time 1. But what I do know is that he's a dog, and, like adding him to your roster will have benefits. And maybe in looking at a team in that range, I'm looking at Utah. Next to Keontae George, that could be Utah's future backcourt if Colin Sexton is out of there. But if Memphis is looking at moving Marcus Smart, as I brought up earlier, he could fit there as well. Or is Memphis going to trade up to get Klingon? So Memphis is in a position where they could probably trade down or up. It doesn't even matter because Memphis has their team intact. John Morant was just suspended and then injured for most of the year. So Memphis doesn't need to swing for the fences, if you will.
I think my guy in this draft is Zach Edey. More than I know, like a lot of attention's been put on, guys like Bronny and a lot of the foreign players. I'm looking at Zach Edey because it's like, I get it. You feel like he's not that athletic, but then he goes on, outperforms Brook Lopez's, combine time. Then you get him in the NBA. He's an older guy, mature guy, champion.
We'll see him in the Olympics.
So like just a guy that could really ball. Like, granted, you couldn't beat UConn. It's tough, but like to win that many games, to win Player of the Year, he basically swept all the Player of the Year awards for 2 years in a row. And now you're going to go get a guy from France that averaged 11 points. It's like, it just doesn't make any sense to me with these NBA guys. If he can move,
because they're looking at measurables and not basketball.
Yeah, but
they're looking at basketball. They're looking at age because
I don't need you to your 40. I need you from 20. If I can get you from 24 to 30 and from 26 to 30, it all clicks, then that's 4 seasons of sold out basketball. Restaurants are popping. We're on ESPN.
Even longer than that, you can get them to 32 and it's still the same.
Exactly. So as long as I get you, if I get you here, like OKC at 12, they were the number 1 seed.
He would be great there.
Right there. You get Chet. You can put him and Chet on the floor at the same time. You get Chet out there extending the floor, Edey down low, getting rebounds. I just don't understand. Like Bill Belichick said, he's like, don't tell me what a guy can't do. Tell me what he can do. If he can rebound and score, he's going to get whoever is defending him is going to be in foul trouble.
Right.
because he's gonna back you down. He's gonna beat through you. So you're gonna have to follow him. Like Wemby was gonna go up and over you because he's so long and strong. Edie is the same size and probably like 270, 280, something crazy like that. So I would take a shot with Edie if I'm one, especially if I'm one of these teams that, like, maybe not Portland, but if I'm just one of these teams that's like, so, like I said, OKC at 12, number 1 seed. I wouldn't draft a developmental player. I would draft a guy that I could put in right now.
I also like for OKC. I can't remember right now if they have more than one. I think they might have more than one first round pick as well. But I like DeRon Holmes.
I'll check it right now.
Yeah, I like DeRon Holmes out of Dayton for them too, even though that might be a little high for him. He's a 39% 3-point shooter, big guy that can stretch the floor. Put him next to Holmgren and mix it up, and defensively, offensively, you still get that Boston element that we were talking about earlier. So that could be a look too if they're willing to trade down. A lot of people like Dalton Connect. I know you brought up Tennessee.
Yeah. He was like, he put up a lot of shots in that game against Purdue, but it was like he kind of shouldered that moment. You need a guy like that on your team.
I've been hearing a lot of people on him lately. I'm not so big on him, so to speak, but like I could see like a Luke Kennard type dude out of him, which isn't bad depending on what team you are. So if you're Memphis,
that could work
perfectly for you.
That's a perfect role. That's a perfect role for a guy. Like, give me 18 to 20 minutes of, stretching the floor, 35, 40% from 3.
Right.
Like, I'm good with my guard or forward, a small forward shooting like that. I want a power forward that can rebound. I want a center that can defend the rim, because we talked about it. Literally, Dallas had 2 guys that could defend the rim, and Minnesota couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
They couldn't do anything about it because they couldn't stretch the floor. But if I could stretch the floor offensively and defend the rim defensively, then you're good to go.
Right. And that's why I think Memphis would be a perfect spot for Dalton Connect, because I think that where they are and what they are, that's what they're missing. That small forward spot has been a hole for them. That's why they had Dylan Brooks there. They brought in Marcus Smart. They've been waiting for Zaire Williams to do anything that resembles basketball, and it's just not happening. So, so if not Dalton Connect, maybe that's where Jalen Williams' little brother will go. Ron Holland, he's the other piece of that G League Ignite that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to think about this guy. Like literally, he's either going to be Vince Carter or he's going to be worse than RJ Barrett. Like there's no in between. So I'm thinking of like a Cam Reddish. Like there's no in between. He's either going to be Vince Carter or Stanley Johnson. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's tough, man. It's like these guys, they go to G League thinking that, oh, this is better than college. I'm getting paid. And it was a good move at first. And then the NCAA announced NIL, I believe, a year after the G League said, we'll give you $500,000. If it wasn't 1 year, it was 2, but I believe it was like the following off season. They're like, all right, we're gonna let you get your NIL. So these guys are going on there. I don't know how much development you got going 2-32.
Right. I mean, you got to shoot a lot, because I mean he averaged 20 points, 19 and a half points. So I mean, he got to shoot a lot. You know what I mean? So
I don't know what translates to winning in that kind of environment. Or do you go there thinking like, you know what? I'm getting this $500,000. I'm going to be a top 10 pick anyway.
We looked at the rosters for the teams with the best records in the G League, and it wasn't anything crazy that stood out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like Matt McClung was on one of the teams, but it is what it is. But I like a name that I've heard. I ain't gonna say I like a name that I heard is T-John Saloon. Potentially going to San Antonio at 8. He played, or I'm sorry, not played. He has the same agent as Wemby. So, you have
The
some
French
form of
guy.
connection there. Yeah. So you have some form of connection there. Um, Another name that I'm looking forward to seeing is Bub Carrington. He wasn't a top 100 player, but if you're a contender, he could be a nice guy to stash. Like, if you're a Milwaukee, a Minnesota, a Denver, somebody like that, he could be the nice developmental guy that, you got Anthony Edwards in place, or, like in Denver, you're going to lose KCP potentially. So you're going to need something potentially, but not to come in and be a star.
Yeah.
They did re-sign Reggie Jackson for whatever reason today. You know what
I
I mean?
mean, 10 points off the bench is 10 points off the bench. You can't,
Yeah.
10 points, couple of rebounds, couple of assists off the bench. That's a solid role player. You would
Yeah.
like that guy to be younger and develop and not an older guy get you to 10 points. But if it works for the flow of your and the dynamic of your offense, then I think that, that's a good
You
move.
know, I don't know if Residente is watching, but one player we talked about yesterday was Jarrett McCain out of Duke because he's a Duke fan, and he's also a Miami Heat fan. So for me, that's a perfect fit. Jarrett McCain to the Miami Heat. He's one of those culture guys, shot 40% from three this year at Duke, shot something like 51% in transition on threes.
Yeah.
He went
You can't
to
be
Steph
doing
Curry's.
TikToks in the locker room though in
Yeah, he can't be
Miami.
doing that. I know he's got the fingernail painting thing going on, but he went to he went to Steph Curry's camp. He went to Chris Paul's camp. So he's definitely like a student of the game, if you will. Which that's some of the reason why I think that he would fit in Miami. Um, I would like to see how that plays out. Jacoby Walter from Baylor. He's one of those guys. He's going to be feast or famine. I think that he's more like a slimmer, slightly more athletic Tim Hardaway Jr. So,
Yeah.
another guy that you're not adding him right now, you're not expecting him to come in, turn the fortunes of your franchise around. But if you're in that 18 to 25 range, he's another piece that can add on to where you're on your road to. I think he'll be a good NBA player. But the one name in that range that I'm looking at is Isaiah Collier.
Okay.
Everybody remembers him from USC. He was on the team with the guy that we'll get to later, named Bronny. But he's a Tyreek Evans kind of guy. Can't shoot, but I think that he was hindered at USC. There's some players that you look at in college, and you're like, the structure of college basketball wasn't for this player. So
Correct.
now with the NBA being a more open game, a little more ISO friendly, I think that he has the opportunity to become an all-star down the road.
And with the 20-foot, because it's only 20 feet for your three, it's easy to defend. Like in the 2-3 zone, the free throw line is 15 feet, and then the 3-point line, like it's easy to defend. With the NBA being out to like 22-9 in the corners, I
right,
think 23 plus, it gives you a few more feet and a little bit more space to operate. So we'll talk about Bronny later, but I think sometimes the structure of college might not work for a guy
uh-huh,
if he goes to a place that lets him play the way he wants to play. Like, so if you go to Kansas, you're going to play Bill Self's system. Like, you're not going to just be out here trying to drop 40. But Steph Curry at Davidson, he was the system. It was like,
right,
hey, how do we get you open so you can get shots? Remember back in the day, Jimmer Fredette at BYU. Every player can't get that, but if you are able to kind of get that opportunity, that's why it's kind of hard to judge these guys, especially like you kind of guys. These guys are averaging 12 points, 10 points, but they are keeping their opponents in 60 to 65 point range. You don't need four guys trying to score 20 points. I just need guys
right,
playing tough defense. So it is all
right,
projection. I think you kind of look at the comps if you're a GM, but in the same sense, you got to look at your team. Like, do I need another guy like this?
right,
Do I have four guys who are 6'7", 6'6" to 6'8", who can't really shoot threes? If I already got 4 of those guys, then don't get the next one hoping that his 29% in college can go up to 36% in the NBA because it's unlikely.
Yeah, and another name in that range I was looking at is Nikola Topic. I didn't say Jokic, I didn't say Jovic, I said Topic. Another one, another Nikola. He was supposed to be one of the Spurs targets earlier in this process, but now he has a partially torn ACL. So I'm wondering if he could fall somewhere like Orlando. But the only question I have about him is he Jeremy Lin or is he Goran Dragic? That's going to determine where he goes. Coming off the partially torn ACL, I'm not sure how much film NBA teams have on him. I'm sure somebody's been scouting him,
Yeah.
but he's going to fall in the draft, but that may be a good thing. Rob Dillingham, we talked about him off camera. I think he's probably 5'11. He might even be 5'10, smaller frame than Allen Iverson.
Did they
And
give him 6 foot at the combine?
I think I've seen him listed at 6'1" before, but I
Okay,
really
so
don't think he's that. I really don't think he's that tall.
that's probably him in his shoes.
Yeah, and he's got all the skill. He can score. So if this was say 2017, he could fit into that Isaiah Thomas role in Boston. But the problem is if you're a little dude like that, you got to have something that stands out, have abnormally long arms or something like that, which he doesn't have. So I think that he'll be okay in the league, but there's a lot of people out there that think that he's just going to be a scoring machine, maybe in that Kyrie type of vein. So I'll reserve judgment on that until I see that.
Yeah, that's gonna be pretty tough to do because I know he came into the game in Kentucky with a green light and
Right.
he was firing off. He reminds me a little bit of Maxey the way he kind of comes off and just attacks the team by trying to score the basketball, which I think works if you are on a team that's kind of built to develop. Like if you go to a team, like if you're in San Antonio and it's like, okay, these guys are young and they're trying to score. I don't know if that works if you end up somewhere like New Orleans, where if they kept Brandon Ingram and they kept Zion, I don't know if you're the guy that can just come in there and just kind of fire off when you
Right.
think you're open. I don't know if you get that green light. I
Maybe
don't know if
maybe you could maybe Miami could be that spot if they get rid of Jimmy Butler.
Miami played a lot of younger guys. They played the other Nikola Jovic. He got a lot
Yeah.
of run.
Jaime Jaquez.
Jaime Jaquez got a lot of run. I think they're believing in Tyler Hero more. They gave Duncan Robinson was in the doghouse for like a whole season one year. I forgot what year it was. It was a few years back. I was like, how come you can't get this guy in the game? And I get that you want to play defense, but it's like, sometimes you just need a guy out there that's like, listen, man, give me 12 points, 12 to 15 points shooting these spotted threes or dribble drive and knock down your free throws. Is a 80+% free throw shooter.
Right. And then, of
Yeah,
course,
so
my Wizards got a second pick in the first round as well. So, I like to see Johnny Furphy there from Kansas, the Aussie. I can see him as the Fran Wagner type, from Orlando.
yeah,
And all that is Washington just filling out the front court and taking. I don't want to say he's a project. I think he's really going to be a good player, but you're tanking. So, you're not trying to trade up. You're not trying to do anything crazy.
long as a coach, if you can just match the scheme to the players you have and see what you get. Like
Right.
a lot of these teams, there's going to be a few teams that are going to be sub 24 wins next year, just like we saw this year. It's going to be a lot of teams that are around. I imagine Portland's probably going to they're probably going to be just as bad.
Yeah.
Detroit
Chauncey
probably,
Billups will
so
probably be gone.
he'll probably be gone. So as long as you can like marry the talent that you have to the coaching staff and the scheme, you live and die with it. Because right
Right.
now it's gonna be a lot of teams, probably like 10 teams, like all the teams that are fighting for the play-in. Because 20 out of 30 teams in the NBA make the playoffs essentially. Those 10 that didn't get in, it's probably gonna be the same 10, and the teams that are like 8, 9, 8, 9, and 10, they're probably gonna be the
Right.
same ones. Like you got your Lakers and probably even like Golden State. I think a lot of teams are going to take this step back
Yeah.
because it's not enough talent. It's not enough guys that are really coming in and matching their draft stock. It's not a lot of guys that are coming in really dynamic and changing franchises. Where
Right.
we used to see that a lot. We used to see the number 1, 2, 3, 4 pick, number 6 and 7. Those guys come in and like they get a real shot and they get to change franchises. Now they're drafting developmental guys in top 10. I'm like, I don't my team is terrible. That's why I'm in the top 10.
Right.
That's why I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 every single year. I need a guy that can come in and get me 1, 2, and 3 points as often as possible and defend the other team from scoring on us. That's what I need. And for some reasons, it's a lot of developmental players that's getting picked, and it's just like it's watering down the league to the point where you got guys like Paul George, 34 years old, about to get $50 million.
Right. And then, you got Terrence Shannon Jr., fresh off beating the case that he was erroneously set up for. What's he going to be as an NBA player? I got a wide range on him. Like you remember I was talking about
the guy in Illinois, right?
Yeah. I was talking about how Ron Holland is either going to be Vince Carter or like down there in the Cam Reddish zone. That's sort of how I look at Terrence Shannon. Like he's either going to be Jaylen Brown, even though he's left-handed, he's either going to be Jaylen Brown or he's going to be Kelly Oubre. Like he's somewhere in that spectrum. I just don't know where he fits because he's not overly athletic. And that's why, like, when you look at Jaylen Brown, he's athletic for his size, but he's not necessarily blowing you away a lot of the times. Like, he's not doing East Bays out there and all that kind of thing like that. Even though he can dunk, you know what I mean? He can do the thing. So Terrence Shannon, I'm just wondering, where it's going to be for him. I think he'll be a functional NBA player, you know what I mean? But I just don't see like stardom or, anything like that in his future. Like he could be a really good role player on a championship team. So then with that being said, real quick, before we get to paper towel, a couple of second round sleepers. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but just throw some names out there for the people. I like Jalen Tyson out of Cal. He can score. He's a little reckless with the ball. He's probably more Jaylen Brown than I said Terrence Shannon was. Adam Bona, explosive big man from UCLA. All the reports say that at the combine, he killed the 5-on-5 scrimmage, was the best big man. You got Ryan Dunn, 6'8" out of UVA. Is he Bruce Bowen? Everybody's been on him the last couple of days. I've been hearing his name as a steal, but is Bruce Bowen a steal? I guess it just depends what team he goes to. Kevin McCullough out of Kansas. I think he's going to be an elite role player, big ball handler off the bench. The shot isn't quite there yet. It's been improving, but I go back to 2 years ago, their NCAA tournament game against Arkansas. He stood out there and got on my radar from there. So ever since I've been watching him. Enrique Freeman from Akron, since Bronny didn't want to go to Akron and do the right thing for the hometown, he might be the best player in the draft as far as people who can move without the ball. He doesn't need the ball to be effective. He went to Akron, so a lot of people are probably asleep on him, but I think he'll be pretty good in the NBA. Keyshawn Johnson out of Arizona. He's an energy guy, 6'7", 39% from three. I think the only reason he's going to go in the second round, back to Mr. Logical's point earlier, is because he's a fifth-year senior. So I think people are just looking at him as he's old. If he was good enough to be in the NBA, he would have been in the NBA already. That type of stupid talk.
Which is the dumbest concept ever, because if you draft a guy in the first round that's a developmental project, it's going to take you 2 or 3 years to see if he has any potential. In the meantime, you're going to be drafting another guy for those next 2 years that's probably going to be in the same boat when you could have just had the 24-year-old guy.
Right. And then
ready to go.
And then you got my guards, Jamal Shead from Houston, KJ Simpson from Colorado. Everybody that was watching back during the March Madness time frame, I was all about KJ Simpson then. Nothing's changed. And then I want the Wizards at 51. to grab Tristan Newton, that leading point guard out of UConn, back-to-back national championship, best player on UConn, in my opinion. And then you got AJ Mitchell from UC Santa Barbara, 6'5" guard, 40% from three. He's getting some hype. So those are the second rounders that I got my eye on. But of course, before we get out of here, Bronny. Where we going, Mr. Logical? He getting drafted?
If he was 6'7", it'd be no problem. It'd be a no-brainer. But at listed as 6'1", 6'2", maybe he grows a couple more inches over the next year or so before he hits 21. I think he'd be a good NBA player. I think it would just be tough because I don't know if teams are prepared to handle like that kind of pressure to have LeBron James Jr. on your team. Because if you're drafting him thinking that you're going to get LeBron, I think that's a dumb move. If you're drafting him thinking that you're going to be able to just have him sit, I think that's probably tough. So unless you think you have a spot for him to play right now, I wouldn't draft him. Because your coaching staff, all your press conferences is gonna be about him, like the Tim Tebow effect. And you're just gonna have to just constantly answer questions about him. If you don't have a spot for him where you think, hey, we're gonna take this guy because we think we can use him somewhere. Because I've heard some phrases and I get it, I understand like the context of it, but like draft Bronny, keep him hostage or hold him for ransom. Like this vernacular that people are using. I'm like, keep him on ice. It's like draft the guy so he can play. Like LeBron, I guarantee you, if Bronny had scored 13 or 14 points a game last year, 4 or 5 rebounds, a couple of assists, he would probably be going to the Lakers at some point. But the Lakers can't justify, or I mean, maybe they can. They hired a coach who has no experience. So I can see them potentially maybe drafting Bronny. I think that's the only team that should draft him if they expect to kind of like wait it out. Because you have an in-house person that can develop him. He's on the roster. But if you're Charlotte, or if you're Dallas, or if you're New Orleans and you just have like an extra second round pick and you want to take a flyer on Bronny, that'd be a bad idea. I think the only team that should really draft him are teams that really want to play him and feel like they're getting the steal with a good, smart, backup point guard if he has that kind of talent in the second round. Or you're the Lakers and you're like, I'm going to draft him because Thanasis is on the Milwaukee Bucks and he's getting minutes.
All right, so we'll come back to that. That's going to be the closing question that I have. So we'll get back to that for a second. But so my thoughts are, I'm going to take your statement, something that you said, and I'm going to go somewhere different with it, try to take it a different route. So yes, do not draft Bronny if you think you're getting LeBron. But you may want to draft Bronny if you think you're getting LeBron's work ethic. If you feel that you need something in your locker room, someone in your locker room that is going to push themselves, always try to get better, knowing that they're not bigger than the team. And you just want that humble yet, because everything that I've seen from Bronny so far is like, yo, I'm Avery Bradley. I'm this, like, I know that, I'm not a superstar or whatever. So he seems to have the right mind frame, especially going back to what you were saying about Zach LaVine earlier. So if you want a guy that you want to take a flyer on, you isn't going to expect to come in and get 20 shots a game and is okay with that and wants to work hard and develop and climb up to earn his position. That's why he goes by the paper towel, because he didn't want to be known as LeBron James Jr. So that right there are good signs to me, that he will be successful, even if it's not in the NBA, but I think he will be successful in the NBA. He has the right mind frame. But to close it out, that's what I was going to ask you. So I know we've heard Dallas, we've heard Toronto, we've heard Minnesota. So what type of teams do you think could afford to bring Bronny in if the Lakers don't do it? Is there 2 or 3 teams that you think like, because like somebody like, I mean, it's easy to say somebody like OKC, so I won't do that. You know what I mean? But is there somebody out there that you feel like if Bronny went there, like, not that it's a perfect match per se, but that it wouldn't be detrimental?
It wouldn't. I think Phoenix.
Okay.
If they have a second round pick, I think that because they needed a point guard. I know Frank Vogel was essentially fired for demanding a point guard. I think Phoenix might be a good move. They have superstars there, so I think they'll understand like the limelight and how to, coach him through that. I like Minnesota. I think if Mike Conley has one more run in him, I think that's a great tutor for Bronny. Not Houston, not San Antonio. I mean, this Dallas buzz, I don't know where that's really coming from. I don't know if that just was conversation because they were in the finals. Miami, I don't think that relationship's strong enough. Cleveland, I don't think the relationship with LeBron Senior, like the pops, I don't think that's a smart move. I think Philly, they have a second round pick. He can kind of play like the Maxey role, like that streaky, just tough, smart, humble superstar. I don't think I've ever seen Maxey like taunt anyone or even get a technical. I think he has the right mindset of just development and growth. I think I don't know like where Maxey came from, but you could see in that playoff game against the Knicks where they were down 7.
He came from Kentucky. What you mean?
Oh, my bad. Pardon me. But as far as like, he just kind of came out of nowhere as far as like the way he exploded on the scene. Like the way you expect Tobias Harris to play and score with the check that he was getting, Maxey was doing that. I think Philly would probably be a good move. It's probably a lot of places if you have a small guard in place that's a bit of a vet, I think that's a good spot for him. If you don't have that, then I would just stay away entirely because you're not gonna be able to avoid the questions and the speculation and the scrutiny and constantly being bombarded with just questions and reports and rumors and everything else surrounding them. And it's unfortunate, that he just wants to be a young basketball player and he's gonna have to deal with this modern media that's obsessed with his pops. I mean, let's keep it a bean.
Right.
But if you want to keep him and hope it works out, I would say the Lakers.
Okay. So I like Minnesota, saying especially if Mike Conley is still on the roster, because that could be a future look in the mirror, maybe.
That's a bridge right there.
Yeah, like you know what I mean? If you could get that mentorship from Mike Conley, then I think that'll start your NBA career off the right way.
One more is I think I don't know what the relationship is between him and Dwayne Wade. I don't know if it's like, whatever, but I think Utah, Dwayne Wade being a part of the ownership group.
Well, thank you for stealing my next team.
Well, that's why we got to show you that, dog. That's why we work together. This is why
I was going to say Utah. I was going to say Utah for the same reasons. Another team that I just thought about that obviously they would have to move Trae Young, but Atlanta. I think that if DeJounte Murray becomes their full-time point guard, you got Kobe Buffkin, who is their rookie from last year that you're going to give minutes to if Trae's out of there. You got AJ Griffin, so Bronny can play behind them. And you got Quinn Snyder, one of those old Duke, kind of dudes, you know what I mean? Yeah. That isn't overly athletic, but has a mind for the game of basketball. So I think that could work. And then the last team that I'm going out on a limb on, I don't expect you to agree with this one. I was thinking Memphis. I like Memphis.
Tyus Jones.
No, Tyus Jones is in Washington. Thank you very much. But yeah, like you got, I like Taylor Jenkins, their head coach. Memphis is what's the word I'm looking for? They're a fringe contender that's still trying to find their way. So you're not going to a team like Atlanta with a losing culture or, a losing mentality. Like Memphis is building and trying to become. I mean, they
But a
were just
lot
a
of
2 seed 2 years ago,
yeah, the second round picks end up with like these two-way deals where a lot of them aren't really even on the quote unquote like the active roster. It's like a very weird like
Right.
space to put them in. Like I said, if you're
Or
not
he could
going to
just go
play them,
undrafted and sign with the Lakers.
go undrafted, sign with the Lakers, or if I don't know if he's missed the cutoff, but you transfer to Duke. I don't know how that works. I
Well,
don't know if
no,
that's
he's
a
already
possibility. He's
yeah,
already
since
passed
he
that deadline.
yeah.
Get a waiver if that's the case, and just go play with Cooper Flag and Duke and throw him lobs. Show people you could be a viable point guard, but going undrafted would probably be the best bet because I know Austin Reeves talked about this. I saw an interview of him. Him and his agent were talking about like different teams, and I think he even told a couple of teams like during like the second round drafting, like they would talk to his agent, and him and his agent were like, listen, we're looking for this kind of deal because I guess you can kind of have that conversation in that moment. And he didn't want the deal. I think I forgot the team that he mentioned, but a lot of those deals kind of lock you in, and you're locked in for a while. There's not a lot of
Yeah, so you
wiggle
almost
room.
rather go undrafted.
You rather go undrafted. Like, don't draft me at 57 when people thought I was going to go 37, and then keep me on the shelf. Just let me slide all the way out, and
Yeah.
then let me make my own path
I can pick my
afterwards.
own spot and just
Yeah.
let the chips fall
If
where
you
they may.
if you're gonna get 57, get a guy from Lithuania or something like that that might need to stay over there for 2 or 3 more years anyway. Like, don't box me in when you're not gonna give me an opportunity, especially if you had multiple picks in the draft and now you're coming to me at 57. Like, just get another developmental piece. I'm already on the phone with other teams.
Right. So yep. So there you have it. The draft is in 2 days. So, well, actually, you're on the East Coast, so one day for you. So,
True.
first night on Wednesday. Of course, we'll be back on Thursday. Maybe we'll sneak in here a little bit for the draft. We'll see. And go from there. But thank you for the support. Like, review, subscribe, share, do all the free things. Make sure Granny's got her warm glass of milk. You know what I'm saying? Before she
Or
goes to
whiskey,
bed.
whatever kind of grandma you got.
Yeah, whatever. She might need a hottie toddy like me right now. But we will be back. Thanks for the support. Saying we appreciate you. We love you. See you in a few days. Peace.